The first sound I heard wasn't a scream. It was laughter. Soft. Lazy. Almost playful. The kind of laughter that doesn't belong in a house where someone is supposed to be helpless. That was the exact second I knew installing the cameras wasn't paranoia. It was survival. My name is Marina Holloway. I'm 37 years old. I've been married to Daniel for 9 years, and for the last 2, his paralyzed mother, Evelyn, has lived in our apartment after her stroke left her unable to walk. At least, that's what everyone believed. Friends praised me endlessly. "You're an angel, Marina." I cooked for her, bathed her, lifted her, cleaned up everything she dropped or spilled. I absorbed the exhaustion quietly, because that's what good wives do. But something had shifted. Daniel started coming home later. Evelyn lowered her voice whenever I entered the room. Doors closed too fast, and the bruises on my wrists' fingerprints were impossible to explain away as accidents. "She can't even stand," Daniel snapped when I tried to talk. "Stop imagining things." That word again. Can't. So I stopped talking and started watching. I installed the cameras without telling anyone. No threats. No confrontation. Just tiny lenses tucked into corners where no one ever looks. That evening, after Daniel left for what he called a quick errand, I sat on the couch with a mug of untouched tea and opened the footage on my phone. I expected nothing. What I saw instead made my stomach drop. Evelyn moved. Not a twitch. Not a struggle. She stood up. And Daniel, he was laughing. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I stood up slowly, already knowing one thing for certain. Someone was about to lose everything. I rewound the footage 3 times, hoping my eyes were lying to me. Evelyn didn't just stand, she walked. Carefully at first, then confidently, stretching her legs like someone waking from a nap. She even rolled her shoulders, smiling as if pain had never touched her body. Daniel stood beside her, clapping softly. "See? Told you keeping the act was worth it." My chest felt tight. Every sleepless night, every ache in my back, every apology I'd whispered to her when I dropped something from exhaustion, all of it replayed in my head at once. The footage jumped forward. Evelyn sat back into the wheelchair just seconds before the front door opened. Her face shifted instantly, fragile, bitter, weak. A performance so practiced it made me nauseous. That's when I understood the real truth. The stroke wasn't the scam. I was. They needed a nurse, a wallet, a shield, and I'd been perfect. I muted the sound, but I could still see Daniel lean down, kiss the top of her head, and whisper something that made her laugh again. My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. "Running late. Make sure Mom eats." I stared at the screen, calm settling over me like ice. They thought I was blind. They had no idea I was done being useful. I didn't confront them. Not that night. I played my role perfectly. When Daniel came home, I smiled. I reheated his dinner. I adjusted Evelyn's blanket and asked if her legs hurt. She sighed dramatically, gripping my wrist a little too hard, and whispered, "Every day." I almost laughed. Over the next few days, I watched everything. Daniel's temper when he thought I wasn't listening. Evelyn standing up in the middle of the night to stretch, to cook, to dance quietly in the kitchen. The way they mocked me when they thought the cameras couldn't hear. "She believes anything," Evelyn said once. Daniel replied, "That's why I married her." Each clip carved something cold and sharp inside me. Then the money started making sense. My savings drained slowly, medical equipment, therapy fees, medications Evelyn didn't need. Daniel insisted on handling the bills. I let him. One afternoon, I found paperwork hidden under the mattress. Forms with my signature forged. A power of attorney request half completed. That's when fear finally hit. This wasn't just humiliation. They were preparing to erase me. That night, while Evelyn slept, or pretended to, Daniel stood behind me in the kitchen and said calmly, "You're nothing without us, you know." I smiled back, because by then I knew exactly how wrong he was. The moment everything shattered didn't happen behind closed doors. It happened on a Sunday afternoon, with witnesses. Daniel invited people over, neighbors, his cousin, even the building manager. He said Evelyn was declining and wanted prayers. I understood then. This wasn't concern. It was theater. I watched from the kitchen as Evelyn played her role flawlessly. Weak hands, shaking voice, tears on command. Then Daniel turned to me. Marina hasn't been coping well, he said gently, placing a hand on my shoulder. She's been confused, paranoid. Eyes turned toward me, concerned, curious. Before I could speak, Evelyn gasped dramatically and slid from her wheelchair, on purpose. She hit the floor and screamed. Daniel shouted, "What did you do?" The room exploded. Someone yelled to call an ambulance. Someone else grabbed my arm. The building manager stared at me like I was a monster. I stood frozen, watching Evelyn peek at me through half-closed eyes, smiling. That's when Daniel leaned close and whispered, "No one will ever believe you." He was right. Not yet. As the ambulance sirens approached, I felt something inside me finally go quiet. Because humiliation was the last thing they'd ever get from me. That night, after they took Evelyn to the hospital and Daniel stayed behind to explain everything, I went home alone. I didn't cry. I cleaned. I wiped every surface they'd touched. I folded laundry with steady hands. I brewed tea and let it go cold, just like the night I first watched the footage. Pain had passed its peak. What remained was clarity. I replayed the recordings again, not like a wounded wife, but like an investigator. Dates, times, movements. Evelyn standing, walking, Daniel helping her in and out of the chair. Their jokes, their plans. Then I made a list. Not of revenge fantasies, of facts. Fraud, medical deception, financial abuse, forged documents, emotional manipulation, false accusations in front of witnesses. They thought revenge meant screaming, breaking things, public meltdowns. They underestimated me. By morning, I had copied every file to 3 separate drives. One hidden, one mailed to myself, one saved in a cloud account Daniel didn't know existed. I also made 2 phone calls. One to a lawyer, the second to someone who owed me a favor. When Daniel finally came home at dawn, exhausted and confident, he said, "You should apologize today." I nodded, because the plan didn't require his permission anymore. Execution didn't begin with shouting. It began with patience. I apologized publicly, exactly like Daniel wanted. Soft voice, downcast eyes. I told the neighbors stress had made me unstable. They nodded, relieved. Evelyn smirked from her wheelchair when she returned home 2 days later, playing fragile again. That night, after everyone slept, I sent the first email. Anonymous. Precise. Attachments included. Hospital administration. Insurance provider. Adult protective services. The footage spoke better than I ever could. 2 days later, insurance called Daniel at work. I listened through the camera as his voice shifted from confident to confused to sharp-edged panic. Then the bank froze our joint account. Then the hospital requested a reassessment of Evelyn's condition in person. The real moment came in the living room. A nurse asked Evelyn gently, "Can you try standing for me, ma'am?" Evelyn looked at Daniel. Daniel looked at me. I met his eyes and smiled. Not cruelly, just calmly. And Evelyn stood up. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. Daniel unraveled faster than I expected. Within hours, neighbors were whispering. By evening, 2 officials returned, one from insurance fraud, the other from social services. Evelyn's performance collapsed under real questions. Her voice shook. Her hands forgot how to tremble on cue. Daniel tried to spin it. She was improving, he said. Miracles happen. But miracles don't come with forged documents. They showed him the signatures. My name, written in a hand that wasn't mine. His face drained of color when they mentioned criminal liability. That night, he finally confronted me. "You planned this," he hissed, blocking the hallway. "You ruined us." I looked at him, really looked, and felt nothing. "You ruined yourself," I said quietly. "I just stopped protecting you." Evelyn cried for the first time. That wasn't an act. Not for shame, for fear. The bank accounts were frozen. An investigation opened. Daniel was suspended from work pending inquiry. As they packed their things under supervision, Evelyn grabbed my arm. "You think you've won?" she whispered. I leaned in and replied, "This is only the truth catching up." The door closed behind them, but the story wasn't finished yet. 3 weeks later, the apartment felt lighter, quieter, like the walls themselves had finally exhaled. Daniel was charged with fraud and identity misuse. Evelyn lost her insurance coverage permanently. The hospital issued a formal apology to me. The neighbors who once avoided my eyes now whispered my name with something close to respect. The final twist came in a plain white envelope, a letter from the building management. During the investigation, they'd reviewed security footage from common areas, footage I hadn't even asked for. It showed Daniel repeatedly lifting Evelyn's wheelchair into his car. No ramps, no assistance, no struggle. They terminated his lease privileges immediately. That same afternoon, I heard a knock. The neighbor across the hall, the one who had always watched quietly, held out a cup of coffee and said softly, "Oh my God, so that's why they acted like that." I smiled for the first time in months. Not because I'd destroyed them, but because I'd reclaimed myself. Some people fake weakness to control others. I learned that true strength is knowing when to stop being silent and letting the truth do the rest.